Ken Morse will be talking about the district's equity action plan. And I believe Paul Hayes will also be sharing with you what the district is currently doing, because I think that's important. There are things that are in place right now.
The school board and the administration of the school district really wanted to make sure the public and stakeholders understood all the work that we're already doing around the equity issue, but also the biggest thing is to just listen. We want to get feedback directly from people in the school district and understand what their needs and perceptions are so that we can use that moving this forward. This conversation is just beginning. It's going to be something that will be ongoing that we can learn from.
I'm going to talk just a little bit about the trend data. It's good to know where, if you're going to know where you're going, it's good to know where you've been. And so the first piece of information that you're looking at is the 15-year trend data on free and reduced lunch. I'm sure, even for me standing right here, it's difficult to see, so let me just give you some reference points. At that end, starting in 2001, the free and reduced percentage was 27.5% of our students or families were considered or taking advantage of the free and reduced lunch program, which tends to be an indication of income or lack of income within the family. As we move across, we're now currently at 47% free and reduced lunch. And as you can see, it's been pretty much a steady climb. The last 2 years it's flattened out. Last year it was 47. It's one of those that you could, some statisticians probably start connecting points and you would draw a line. I don't know how accurate it would be, but we do know that from 2001, we've not quite doubled our free and reduced population. And why is that concerning? We do have data that shows on the indicator tests that we're using for performance in reading and math seems to have some correlation. It does have some correlation between the free and reduced population. Students tend to score a little bit lower if they're in that category, the free and reduced. The next slide, piece of data we're going to look at is the district minority enrollment. And again, that's starting in, this is total minority enrollment starting in around 2001 at 14.6%, and we're currently on 29%. Again, if you start connecting the dots, it looks like we're on if you were to project that out on the past trends, it looks like that number would just continue. We have no evidence that we can base that it will happen, but going on past trend, it looks like where we're going. All right.
A little transition here to Ken Morse Jr. for some of his information.
Welcome. Wow, that was a garbage welcome. Welcome. All right. I mean, if I got to be out here in this cold, we're going to endeavor together. Come on now, give me some energy. I need to feed off of this, y'all. All right. First, I bring you greetings from our family. My lovely wife, Clarice and Avery, who are at home warm. I also bring you greetings from my ancestors, those that have come before me, that have laid down the foundation. Is upon their work, dedication, upon whose shoulders I stand. My comments are going to be brief so I can allow for us to really engage in listening and the dialogue that this evening is designed for. I'm going to provide a little bit of context for our work with the Equity Action Plan, and share out just some examples of some celebrations and some of the work that we're already engaging in, as well as talk about some areas of improvement. Okay. So why equity? As the landscape of our country is changing, education has been slow to meet the needs of learners who span all the dimensions of diversity. Moreover, linguistic and cultural diversity in the classroom has the potential to enlighten and expand our understanding of ourselves and others. Shifting the focus to being intentional about equity will present challenges, particularly for educators. Without question, the demographics of the Cedar Rapids Community School District is changing, as evidenced from the slides. This will necessitate paradigm shifts in how we educate our children. As the district works to deepen its aptitude for educational equity, we must take deliberate actions to close the racial, income, linguistic, teaching, and learning achievement gaps. If we are to have any success in doing the aforementioned, we have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I'm going to say that again. We have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think we're setting forth to endeavor in that tonight by having some courageous conversations about some of them things that we may not feel good about, but yet we have to work through and be better off for, okay? What you have before you is the 6 objectives areas of our equity action plan. Our diversity committee that was in existence a couple of years before I started here began laying down the groundwork to create this document, this robust document. And in those conversations, there were some trends and some themes, and these areas represent the places that the committee felt the district need to focus its energies into these areas in order to make an impact for students as well as all staff and all the stakeholders in the district. And so these areas cover equity and educational equity and cultural consciousness and professional development, effective use of data, in particular disaggregating data, increased community involvement, recruitment and retention to promote a diverse workforce, increased high school graduation rates, and last but not least, decreasing suspensions and expulsions as well as referrals to special education. What I have before you, as I mentioned, just some examples of some of the areas that just in our first year of working through the Equity Action Plan, I think, and it may be early to say celebrate, but it's we're moving in a positive and in the right direction, in my opinion. And while these are just examples, this list is not meant to be exhaustive by any means. At the beginning of this year, we made a concerted effort to make certain that all educators on every level had an opportunity to do a half day or a full day equity pre-service training with our consultant, Mr. Edwin Javis of Equity. There was, from the feedback and the evaluations, it was very positive, but more importantly, when I'm going on class, when I'm doing visits and equity walks and such, I'm seeing a lot of the learnings from that day in the classroom, and the teachers referring to some of their notes from that day, and making, as well as not just teachers, but also as our administrators, just using that teaching and that learning to make a concerted effort to reach students where they are. And so that's been, encouraging, and, it's definitely our intention to keep on supporting not only that work, but making it an imperative that we continue providing cultural consciousness training. I mentioned our community equity walks, and that was an activity that came out of our diversity committee. And in essence, it's an opportunity for our community to walk the buildings of to walk the schools, and we're looking for best practices, and we're also looking to see how culturally responsive the buildings are. That team will walk the halls, walk the classrooms, and provide feedback to those administrators so they can then incorporate into their practice and their school improvement plan. Our office, Learning and Leadership, I think has been doing an improved job of monitoring discipline data. So, and again, this is only my second year in the position. And my first year, it felt like we would collect all the data at the end of the year and then kind of use that to prepare for the next year. Whereas this year, especially with the leadership, with Ellen Day Williams as the manager of attendance and student discipline, her and my supervisor, Paul Hayes, review that discipline, and well, not discipline, but suspension data on a regular basis to look for trends and to mobilize us to see where what building or what particular staff or even that student may need help. And also, and we're looking to be more restorative instead of punitive. And so that's also a theme, and it's a mindset that we're looking to incorporate within all the educators in the district, knowing that, someone sitting at home suspended or at, the Polk Alternative Center, that may not be the best location for them. So thinking about how do we keep them in school, honor whatever sanction that has come from the behavior, but let them restore their dignity, and be able to continue on and not miss out on the learning. In terms of employment, our HR director and that office, I just had a great meeting with them yesterday, and some of the work that they're doing that relates to the Equity Action Plan. They're making some concerted efforts to diversify our employment and our candidate pools. And they have reconvened a diversity work group for that office. One of the initiatives that they're currently looking at is identifying Hispanic serving institutions and historically Black colleges and universities to look at some of the top educator and teacher programs to see if they could build relationships with those universities to build a feeder system to and attract those candidates into Cedar Rapids. And so that was very encouraging to be a part of some of that planning there. Obviously, community involvement is a priority for us. I think we have several memorandums of understanding with organizations like the Academy, SPS. I see Dr. White in the house, represent the Academy. I think LBA. We've done a lot and have partnerships with several nonprofits and organizations that intersect in working with our students. And I know our superintendent meets quarterly with the NAACP and the Academy. And then our Equity Summit was something that was publicized, I think, right before we went into the winter break. And, that was an opportunity for all of our buildings. Our principals have been charged with being required to have an equity goal in their school improvement plans. And the Equity Summit was an opportunity for them to share out some of the work they're doing and some of the progress that they're making with that equity goal. And then we're going to do a follow-up in June to see where they are. And that's just going to be just a new way of doing business, another accountability measure, but it's also a great way for our buildings to share best practices and not have to necessarily reinvent the wheel when it comes to some of the issues that they encounter. Before I close, I think it's only right, to talk about some of our areas of growth, because clearly we don't have it figured out. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be here. As proud as I am of the Equity Action Plan, I listed it as an area of growth because it needs to go beyond just my own personal efforts and the efforts of learning and leadership, and it has to be a document that's owned by the entire system. And while I definitely take pride in leading those efforts, we can't do it solely. it can't be equity, just can't be a Ken initiative. It has to be all of ours. And so, that's definitely an area of growth. Moving forward with the mentality and that equity is not, just some strategy. Oftentimes people will call me and say, I need a strategy. I need this strategy, tell me how to work with these black students. And it's a mindset, it's not, just as easy to, pull out a page out of a book and give them an activity and, the problem will be solved. It goes deeper than that. We also need to continue to determine some aggressive action plans to increase our employment pools, because currently, again, through the slide, our students of color make up almost 30% of the district, while our employee numbers are, I think, at 5 or less than 5. So we want to have a diverse workforce that reflects the student body and reflects the growing and changing community. And another thing that, before I close and transition to Paul, we have a lot of really great things going on in the district. But yet, if you ask someone, depending on who you talk to, no one, readily knows. And so, we have to build a repository of all the equity and diversity initiatives that are going on. I know I've seen my guy Ramamuzo here is doing some fantastic work with some of the youth at Hoover Elementary, and as well as others. I'm picking on Rama because he's right there. But if you ask someone, they don't know. I think he has like 3 or 4 teams that participate in soccer and basketball. And the great thing is not just that's just kind of the carrot. He's built the program so that they have to achieve academically in order to be able to participate in some of the extracurriculars like robotics and such, and really linking the learning to the activities. And that's just one of many activities that are going on at different school sites. I know different teachers, are taking it upon themselves to do different things that's directly related to diversity. And that's great, but I think we need to do a better job of capturing all those efforts, not only to tell the story, but to support those efforts so that they make an impact in the lives of the students that we're serving. So on that note, I think I may have exceeded my 10-minute mark. I'm going to transition and let Paul Hayes share in some of his work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and don't worry, I can rescue any agenda out there and speak very quickly. My name is Paul Hayes, Director of Learning Supports for Cedar Rapids Schools. And on behalf of the Learning Supports Department, I really just want to thank all of you for coming out. It's your input that is going to help inform our work moving forward. So we're very excited about this opportunity to get some feedback from the community about the efforts that we have underway. That being said, we'd like to take an opportunity, to provide some feedback for us right now on what you heard from Ken in terms of our equity action plan. And I'm going to put back up the objectives of that plan. And on your tables are 2 different sets of T-charts. If you will look at the one that says the Equity Action Plan Implementation. And we'd like you to take a few minutes and reflect on what you heard from Ken and give us some glows, some things that you heard that really resonate with you that are positive things. Some grows, as Ken mentioned, but where are some areas that you would like to see the district improve in terms of that equity action plan? And then there's a space for you to just ask any questions that you have. So if you could just take a few minutes and reflect on that and record that on that sheet of paper, I will invite you back in 2 or 3 minutes and talk to you more about the efforts that we have underway in the district. For this next part, I'd like you to find the handout at your table that is entitled Equity Efforts, Collaborations, and Programming, Cedar Rapids Community Schools. That's what we'll be referring to during this next part. And I'm just briefly going to highlight some of the things in here. I'm not going to read the entire document to you. but want to just bring to your attention many of the efforts that we do have underway currently in the district to address equity with our students. That first page that you see is a list of the district equity efforts that we have underway. Ken mentioned restorative justice, and some of you have likely heard about restorative justice or the use of restorative practices, and you will be hearing more about that. But in a nutshell, restorative justice is going beyond just simply disciplining a student and issuing a punishment. It's having conversations with that student and engaging the student and their family in conversations about what harm was done and what needs to be done to repair that harm. Oftentimes that may be accompanied by a sanction, but this restorative justice gives meaning to that sanction and allows that student that time to reflect and say, what do I need to do to make this better? So again, you will be receiving more information as we roll the restorative practices work forward and get more and more people trained. You'll be hearing more about that as well. And then several other things there, our contract with Ed Equity, with Edwin Javis that Ken mentioned. Every school building in the district has a goal in their school improvement plan around equity. Then the diversity committee and the board's work. The next page, the restructuring of the learning supports department. We are one of very few districts in the state and maybe even in the country who has a dedicated department solely for the purpose of supporting student learning in the form of learning supports and the equity efforts and the discipline and attendance focuses tend to fall under a larger umbrella of student services. Cedar Rapids Schools has chosen to dedicate a department to learning support. So over the past few years, we've developed and grown that department to include very specific positions that are targeted at addressing the equity needs of students. For example, the manager of student equity, manager of student discipline and attendance, both are sharply focused on what is happening with our students, looking at the data, and what are the areas of equity we need to consider in moving forward with those efforts. The next part is the community representations and collaborations. Several of the district administrators serve on boards, on committees throughout the city that are having very similar conversations about what are our students facing, what's available in the community, how do we engage the community, that this is not just an issue for the school district. We see the kids 6 hours out of their day, so how do we engage the rest of the community in making sure that some of the efforts that we have underway are aligned with community efforts and complement those. And then the last page is a list of the culturally specific programming that we have in the district. I'll bring your attention to AAAP, the African American Achievement Program, and the Rites of Passage, are two very long-standing programs in the district that up until last year were funded through DHS and juvenile court. Because we learned very late in the district's budgeting process that those would no longer be funded, we had to not start those programs here at the beginning of the year, but we have figured out funding for those programs, and both should be starting here in the next week or two. And then Ken also mentioned the Leaders, Believers, Achievers, LBA, the Academy for Scholastic Personal Success. Kids on Course is not necessarily culturally specific, but certainly plays a role in providing those equity efforts and skills and supports for students and families. I'm going to invite Trace Pickering up now to talk a little bit to you about some of the innovative programming that we have available to students.
Good evening. In terms of innovative programming, as a district, when we think about innovative programming, the real focus is on personalized learning. And how do we drive more personalized learning approaches, because one size doesn't fit all. All of our schools do very good jobs trying to personalize learning, but we know there's new models and different ways out there. And so our innovative approaches are helping us discover that way. For us, personalized learning is really a pathway to more equitable learning systems for everyone. The more personalized it can be and tailored to that individual, obviously the more equitable it becomes. A few quick examples. We've got our first magnet school that started this year, Johnson STEAM Academy. We are planning to open next year the Kenwood Leadership Academy Magnet School, and we are in the process of applying for $12 million of federal funds to open even more magnet schools. A key distinction between magnet schools here in Cedar Rapids and some others that you may be familiar with, we are committed to the neighborhood school philosophy. So Johnson Elementary is a neighborhood school, and children whose attendance zone is Johnson are in. They never have to worry about lottering in or being pushed out. It's their school. We fill in additional space from around our community through the lottery process. And so we feel that's a very important element as part of our magnet schools. We also have some programs going on at Roosevelt Middle School, Jefferson High School, and you may have heard of our Iowa Big program. All of these things are tailored to personalized learning and helping kids find their passion and find the path that they're meant to be on. And so that's just briefly some of the innovative efforts, but we want to make sure that innovation and equity are connected together. Thanks.
Thank you, Trace. So once again, at your table is yet another T-chart for you to provide some feedback on that document and the programming and the efforts currently existing in the district around equity. So again, some time for reflection, discussion at your table about what you've heard, and an opportunity to provide us with some feedback, some input, again, to inform our work moving forward in both of these areas of the Equity Action Plan and the programming that we have available.
Hey, thank you. Your attention, please. We're going to engage in a process called World Cafe. I'm sure many of you have experienced some version or another of this. World Cafe gives all of us the opportunity to engage in conversation with many different people over the next 50 minutes or so on questions that we feel are really important for us to have and conversations to have. The questions are up here. There are 12 sheets of paper spread around at different tables, and district folks, will you raise your hand if you're at a table that has one of the questions? So you can see where they're at. Shelby, pretend you work for the district and raise your hand. Okay, thank you. So here and here, you do not have to get too picky about which question you start at. We're going to have 6 rounds, so you're going to have the opportunity to go and have conversations around all of these questions. Here's how World Cafe works. You start it wherever you want to start. Can be in groups of 6 to 8. If there gets to be more than 8 people, I would suggest you find another place. These questions are on 2 different tables, so there's 2 groups dealing with the same question, so we should have plenty of time there and space. World Cafe is about a conversation. You start engaging in conversation around the question. There are markers on the table. We encourage everybody to grab a marker. There is not a single scribe. Your job, write down ideas and thoughts and what you're hearing, and try to record the best you can the conversation you're having. You're going to do that for 5 to 8 minutes. I'm going to announce a switch, and then you'll have the opportunity to leave that table and go to a different question. You do not go together as a group. You scatter to different tables. This gives you the opportunity to converse with a lot of different people and with a lot of different perspectives tonight.
We talked about the 29% students of color in the district. 5%, I think, was the number for teachers. And so, this research says kids, role models, they look up to somebody who looks like me. So, but we don't have that situation, and that's not going to happen overnight. So that means it takes that extra effort upon the teachers who, in our case, are white, to say, hey, you can still connect with the students, but it's going to take extra effort, and that's where that comfortable with being uncomfortable comes in.
You know, if you are a Latino student, do you feel like your needs are being met? If you are, you know, an Asian Pacific student, do you feel like your needs are being met?
Yeah, non-white is always all bunched together.
Yes, right, as if it's one size fits all. We do something for the white kids, we do something for all you brown kids.
Right?
So when you think about, you know, what PTSD, so you know about the slaves, and so did they get any treatment when they were released from slavery? Does anybody know all the atrocities that they were exposed to? So did they get any treatment? So what happens when you don't get treatment? That toxicity goes on and on and on. And so now we're looking at, I think a lot of this gun violence and stuff we're seeing now relates back to that.
I think people are really naive. I don't think we really do a good job about, as you were saying earlier, really pointing it out to people when they make comments that are inappropriate. I think 50% of the time they don't even know they're making an inappropriate comment. So being honest and talking about why those comments, I try to do this with my kids because sometimes their friends get in the car and we have some interesting things be said, and so I will go back with my kids and we'll talk about why that was not appropriate. I just feel like we need to be doing this more with our kids because I'm not sure that they're really doing a great job of addressing it in the classroom.
So first of all, echoing what John said, thank you. Thank you for being here tonight and engaging in this conversation. And I can tell you over the last several days, and if you saw me on the news, I have been excited about this conversation for several days, but as it's gotten closer, I've been even more excited. And I said to Dora on the news, I said, I have to come up with a synonym for excited in this interview because all I can say is I'm excited. And that has come to fruition tonight. So I have been engaged in robust conversations with people coming at this conversation from a variety of important worldviews. And really, the thing I would say is this: if we want to deliver on the promise that we have made to our community, which is excellence for all, what that word really means is the all-inclusive definition of the word all. And so to the extent that we can have conversations like this that continue to inform our practice about what it's going to take and what it's going to mean to deliver on that promise has value. So you may be wondering what happens next. And so part of what happens next, I think, is grace. So we ask for a little bit of grace. This is a new experience for us, and we're going to try to sift this out. What I know is this: we will take your input and feedback, and we will compile that, and we will make it available so that it's public display of the work that occurred here tonight. Beyond that, what we're really hopeful about is that some themes will emerge from these documents that will guide our short-term and long-term practice. And so I haven't been in on all the conversations, but once this information is put into sort of a singular document, we'll take a look at that and say, are there things within this that can immediately inform our practice and we can take some action around? And in what ways will this conversation inform our ongoing and longer-term practice? So that's really, I think, what we're talking about this evening. I've had the question a couple times, do we intend to do this again? I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. What that timeline will look like, I guess I'm not really sure, partly because I don't know what all is contained in these data and this information.
Our diversity committee in the school district will take this and move forward with the administration, and ultimately we will have more discussions at the school board table around this whole issue to keep moving it forward.